rate plus.
My apologies.
No worries. Plus our average, our fee of $30 a month on top of that, it amounts to between a 4.5 and 5% total of their after-tax income. And the OECD describes this as creating poverty situations in municipalities when water bills approach the 5% mark. And so I implore my colleagues once again that it is not appropriate in my eyes that at this time we increase the cube rate, that it is in fact a challenging time for members of our community, so much so that the Premier is taking drastic measures to put money back into the pockets of residents of this province. It is quite frankly alarming to see the prices that we have are higher than cities around us. I know I'm probably not the only person that one of the great advantages of living rural life is that there are lower costs for us, and we need to try to protect and preserve those costs. So, Mr. Chair, I think back to our last meeting, and I think about some of the options that were left on the table, where we had the opportunity to perhaps do a better job of squaring the circle for residents. And ultimately, we chose the amount that raised prices by 6.6% or so, arguing that, well, that's just what inflation is. Well, inflation's at 4%, Mr. Chair, and we know it's high. We know it's putting a strain on fixed incomes. And so with that, I propose any number of alternatives to my council colleagues, including adjusting the rate to what the actual rate of inflation is, not rate of inflation plus 50%. I propose that we assume our water meter replacement program is actually doing the job that it's set out to do, and I question if we're not going to take in new data from it, why we're continuing or proceeding with that project in the first place, tying up town resources. I suggest that we could put in tiered pricing where residents pay an increased fee if they exceed a set amount, such as 20 cubes per month or 25 cubes per month, where they are given the opportunity to meet the needs of their household for cleanliness, for food and drink and all of these other things. I could propose that we put more of a burden on our largest ratepayers in this community and absorb any hit through taxation, where the reality is it very likely will not be the $17,000. And of course, I share my frustration that I shared last week that most of this $12,000 or so of this is the result of the Highway 1221 Commission unilaterally increasing prices after the time they're allowed to do so, after the time they're to notify their member municipalities. And that's a fact, Mr. Chair. And I looked at that and go, we haven't even heard from 1221 yet. And so it concerns me that we would go ahead and raise these prices, knowing the struggles of people in our community and indeed the whole province. And so I stand resolute in my opposition to raising the metered rate. Thank you.
With all due respect, Mr. Chair, if I may address Councillor McIntosh. I appreciate your concerns that you've presented, and I think it might be advisable for council to proceed with first reading and then therefore open up the opportunity for your public to engage and provide feedback on the bylaw prior to second and third reading and passing.
I would so move that we do first reading.
Thank you, Brian. All in favor? Opposed? One opposed, motion is carried. So we will table the rest of that bylaw until the next regular meeting.
Can I ask a question about it?
Sure.
Is there, I can't remember, but do we have a, because my understanding is that this rate is something that is determined by what all of the communities are that are on that line. And that's the only place that the money gets collected from, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, that's just what I want to know. Thank you. So it has to, somewhere along the line has to be taken care of.
Can we also look to make that meeting 12:21 happen?
The sooner the better.
Okay.
Moving on to new and unfinished business, 7.1, arena access for homeschooling programs.
So on February 14th, the last council meeting, council received a request from Tammy Croach and Michelle Innes. Including the agenda package was the current master rates and schedules arena use fee listing and the arena recreational facility use and allocation policy. Options to consider, option A, revise the policy to include a definition to include homeschooling programs to enable the group to access the facility for free. Option B, request the homeschooling users approach the Bashaw Area Recreation Board to sponsor the homeschooling arena access time slots. Option C, offer a dedicated time slot for Bashaw area homeschooling students within the process, require them to complete an occasional user agreement. The annual operating budget is the source of funding. Camrose County contributes $30,000 annually for arena operations. Our typical annual shortfall offset through taxes is around $50,000 or more. Bashaw Area Recreation Board also received funds to support recreation programs within Bashaw, and those funds are received from Camrose County for programming purposes in Bashaw. The applicable legislation is listed. Administration recommends option B.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I did speak with Tammy this afternoon, and she gave her regrets that she couldn't attend the meeting tonight. She did want to let me know that she has sought out an alternate plan to bridge the gap between now and when ice is removed. And so at this point in time, she looks forward to being able to work with us and come up with a solution for homeschooling users for next fall when the ice goes back in. So my thoughts on this are a couple of things. One, is there an opportunity for us to now take the time, and I haven't spoken to Michelle, so I'm not sure if Michelle's still looking for a short-term solution. But with Tammy off the table, I don't know where Michelle stands, but is there an opportunity now for us to take some time and put a policy in place for our homeschooling school users before the fall comes, or before we put the ice back in the fall? And then secondly, I'm just wondering, you know, the company that she's working with is Cross Ice Development. You know, I mean, they are a local business and they do offer support and training for our young hockey players. Is there an opportunity to reach out to them and see if we can get some designated times for him, and then that way he can book his own clients? Because ultimately that's what Tammy was looking for, was to use cross developments. And so would that be an appropriate thing? So kind of a two-part question there.
He would
I
have to
guess-
rent.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
He would have to
Right.
rent a nice time spot.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing what other communities around are doing, because there's got to be other communities with.
There will be.
Well,
With kids
and I'm
homeschooling as well.
assuming there's more so these days with the number of homeschooling students.
I guess a really good example, if I may, Mr. Chair, is the Bashaw Fun Hockey. So I believe that program is actually subsidized / funded through the Bashaw Area Recreation
Okay.
Board. And so when the Recreation Board puts in its applications to Camrose County for funding to support programming, it's of this nature. It's to cover the ice times or soccer balls or any additional supplies specific to sports related functionality. Ice times the funds that they provide us are specific to our operations and offset our operations. So if you were to say hypothetically offer the sport hockey gentleman a rate, then any other, like we could have potentially other organizations such as Thrive saying, hey, we're offering the same type of training, we would like our ice time for free too.
Well, no,
So,
I'm
and
not
that's
saying,
where
I'm not
it's-
saying for free, I'm saying, should we be reaching out to him and saying, hey, are you interested in some ice time for a rental fee? And then, you know, he could book his own clients.
Right. Well, and I
And
guess,
then he did them the
you know,
scheduling.
with their interaction with Bashaw Minor Hockey, that kind of goes
Okay.
without saying. So if they wanted to sign up as a user and serving specific users in the area, then they're certainly welcome to sign up an agreement for sure.
Mhm.
But then usually within that operational agreement, they do get the ice time for like $90 an hour or whatever it may be, right? Versus all gratis, as what
Yeah.
I understood the homeschooling program was requesting.
What's our regular rental fee now?
For local areas, I believe it's 90, and I'm sorry, I haven't reviewed it for a while.
Okay.
For adults and externals, I'm not sure if it's 100 or 120. So it's fairly reasonable.
I kind of agree with Mayor McDonald in that I'd like to see how other communities are managing this, because we do give the Bashaw School free ice time. And I realize that they belong here and that the county provides us some funding, but so do the families that belong in our county as well. So I would like to see us do, because we have some time now, I would like to see us do a little more sort of research on what other communities are doing for the homeschooling families.
Well, Councillor Northey, fortunately you sit next to me, and I did do some of that research. I phoned around to more than 24 municipalities, and other related businesses. And generally speaking, what we do with respect to the school is atypical. I only found a couple municipalities that have a school rate that is outright free. Usually there is some type of partnership, so that was atypical. And even then, homeschooling was a total non-starter when I chatted with them. But I did extend my reach then and started approaching other things like the Royal Alberta Museum, the Tyrrell Museum, activity centers, things like that. And what I found was, you know, yes, they have school rates and school groups, but generally speaking, it didn't apply to homeschool, which I take a little bit of issue with in the circumstances we find ourselves in. But I was quite pleased to hear that my hometown of Drumheller, right, that the Tyrrell Museum actually offers school groups a completely free entry during the school year, and that extends to homeschool families. And so I found that to be interesting. I think we know we're in a time where homeschooling is increasingly an option that people are choosing, despite how good those public teachers are. Despite that, many people are going that route. And I think about this, I look at our annual shortfall of roughly $50,000. And I go, I feel like other municipalities are going to be having these discussions, maybe not for ice time, but for different things, whether it's a local museum or programs. I also noted that the city of Red Deer, and this was really interesting when Councillor Oren brought it up, actually has something like the Cross Ice Development Fellow that they offer to homeschoolers through the city of Red Deer, where it's a partnership between the city and this individual company, and I can't remember what it is. Where they have that as dedicated time, and it's not necessarily for being, you know, a hockey player, but it's to teach skating and those types of things. And that's a service I think is fairly typically
Skills
offered.
development.
Yeah, skills development, and certainly that homeschool families would be able to access, and not just homeschool families. And so I'm of the mindset that we have a chance to kind of innovate here, recognizing, you know, some of these realms. And so I have a motion already typed if anyone would like to hear it. And we can see if it humors anyone. But the motion that I'm batting over right now is to draft administration to draft a revision to the master rates and schedule with interested parties, assigning homeschool time twice weekly that can be booked by individuals or groups to confirm their enrollment and demonstrate the reading curricular outcomes to be presented to council on or before the July 2022 meeting. It's a mouthful.
It is.
It does leave a few things open though. How big of a time slot are you thinking?
I think my motion intends to ask the administration to work with interested parties to figure out that information.
Okay.
And bring us a proposal in July. And of course, the benefit of having it in July is if we don't like the work admin does, or if we decide that, you know, maybe insurance is a sticking point for us or something else, it gives us time to say no. It gives us time to offer suggestions and refinements and do that before the ice is in. You know, I think there are several possibilities, but right now my preference would be to direct admin to draft a policy revision, intentionally seeking out those people that want their input. You know, and as a teacher, right, my comment about meeting curricular outcomes, I think, is an important part of the motion as well. This isn't a motion designed to allow people just to go skate when they have no other options. The reality is the phys ed program of studies, which I've taught many times, actually has a requirement that you access alternate facilities beyond just a gymnasium or a soccer field. And so as long as they can demonstrate their meeting curriculum, as long as they can confirm their enrollment with an authorized body that's following the Alberta program of studies, I think my motion gives us the opportunity to at least explore the option. That would be the preference. So to me, it's kind of a take on option C that administration has created, but just a little different.
A little wordier.
A little wordier.
So there was a pretty lengthy motion. I'm happy to write it down, but you might have to slow down. So if it is the council's favor to pass the motion.
Well,
Could you reread?
first?
Could you reread that? Could you reread that motion?
I sure can.
Okay, slowly.
Well, and I can also email to you if that helped or no.
Well, for the public record, it's probably advisable that we have it verbally.
I will go slow.
Okay, thank you.
I move we direct administration to draft a revision to the master rates and schedules with interested parties assigning a homeschool time twice weekly that can be booked either by individuals or groups who confirm their enrollment with an authorized body.
Hang on, by individuals.
Individuals or groups confirm their enrollment with an authorized body and demonstrate they are meeting curricular outcomes be presented to council on or before the July 2022 meeting.
July 2022.
Yes.
So this is, I respectfully bring to your attention that the master rates and schedules is a typical fees and rate schedule.
Mhm.
And so the area that would actually be redrafted, I believe, would be the policy. So the policy would in itself would be where we would include additional provisions for homeschooling to generate an application and a user agreement. And then of course they would participate and be included in the overall arena use policy versus listed in the master rates and schedules bylaw.
Okay, this is arena and recreational facility use and allocation policy number 2410.
Correct. So but you mentioned the master rates and schedules bylaw?
Yeah, well, my interpretation, I think I'm wrong, was that this was a part of that bylaw, and so certainly if we can amend the
Yeah.
policy, that would be much better.
The amendment would be within the policy,
Perfect.
and then we could probably make additional reference within the master rates and schedules too.
Perfect. Policy 2410.
Okay. So you want to have that motion changed from master rates bylaw to the applicable policy?
Yes, arena and recreational facility use and allocation policy. I think that's
Thank
a
you.
short name.
Brian, did you catch that?
Yeah, yeah. So you're just asking for a policy adjustment to accommodate homeschooled children or applicants.
Yeah.
And so you're not suggesting whether it is for a fee or not. It's just for administration to explore the possibility of what can be done.
That's my intention.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Yep.
Motion is carried. Item 7.2, development permit application.
So I'm just going to cover a quick, some of the high level areas of this application and this information piece, as it's longer than our usual reports. So administration has went over the report in council has went over the report in detail while in camera. As such, I will present the highlights of the report, and they've also had an opportunity to read it in advance. The application was submitted on January 10th, 2022. The process to date has included 4 incomplete letters issued from administration. The 4th letter indicated that the application would proceed to council for review. There has been information and comments about this application on social media. The Development Authority only reviews materials formally submitted to the town from the applicant. At present, administration continues to deem the application incomplete due to the vague nature of the information submitted. Based on the most recent information submitted, administration has completed additional research regarding facilities of what we believe to be of this nature that are in existence in the province. Administration recommends additional details are needed to complete a review of the application. The town's land use bylaw allows for additional information to be requested during the review process as per section 435D, which states, despite the issuance of a complete certificate or incomplete certificate, the Development Authority can request additional information from the applicant. If in the course of reviewing the application, the Development Authority determines that additional information is necessary to review the application. The list of items administration recommends the applicant submit are listed in the report. Administration recommends that the information listed is required in order to complete a thorough review on behalf of the town. The report presents 2 options for council to consider. Option 1, direct administration to request the applicant submit the additional information outlined in the report to enable council to make an informed decision on the proposed Bear Hills Family Wellness Center. Council may also consider inviting the service providers associated with Bear Hills Family Wellness Center to engage with the town and a third party and a Musquecheese elder in the spirit of reconciliation to help facilitate the discussion regarding the proposed facility and the application requirements. Upon receipt of the information required, council may also consider holding a Bashaw community information session. In the spirit of reconciliation, the information session should be held jointly with a Musquecheese elder and Musquecheese service providers. Option 2 would be to refuse the application, citing the reasons for the refusal. This is not an administration's recommendation at this time.
Discussion. Teresa, can you quickly explain what direct control zoning means?
Direct control zoning is basically where council, Bashaw Town Council is the development authority in that area.
And this property is zoned direct control,
That
correct?
is correct.
So can I ask, how, can you explain how development permits are reviewed and before they come to council, or what we do, or what the process is?
Okay, the typical process is we receive an application, whether it's a land use related application, like specific to operations, and then also a business development application. And so both are reviewed for their completeness. And typically within 21 days, there is a response either saying, yes, we have enough information to process your application, or no, we need more information. So it is very common to request more information within a 21-day period to process an application.
I have a question. I have heard from members of the community about wanting to vote on the development permit. Is this something that can happen?
The development permits are not typically voted on. That's not a part of the process. And so development applications are determined based on their zoning and the land use bylaw. And I'm not sure if there's an additional commentary that you can provide. I have with this Liz Armitage with the City of Planning.
Yes, I can add a couple comments. The development permit process is outlined in the Municipal Government Act, which is a document from the province. And that very large document, Part 17, is specific to development. And so we have to process these applications in accordance with that. As a requirement of the Municipal Government Act, every municipality has to have a land use bylaw. And so our land use bylaw adds additional rules to the process outlined in here. Additional, they have to meet this, and they just provide additional guidance. So all of our development permits, whether you're in Bashaw or Fort McMurray, if you're anywhere in Alberta, they follow the same process, and the incomplete and complete letters or certificates are also required through the Municipal Government Act and reiterated within the land use bylaw. And whether you're applying for a deck, a new house, a new building, or using a building that already exists, you have to go through that same process. We look very specifically at the uses in a land use bylaw for compliance with how those definitions work and what is stated versus what can happen. What is unique about what we're looking at now is it's direct control. So rather than administration ultimately making that decision, council makes that decision.
Mr. Chair, if I can just back things up for a moment, we're quite familiar with Ms. Armitage here, but is it possible to give us a little bit of information on her involvement in this and other matters for us? And maybe explain to us why we have you assisting our development officer?
Absolutely. Liz, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Liz Armitage or Elizabeth, depending on if my dad's in the room and he's mad at me. I am a registered professional planner and a member of the Canadian Institute of Planners in good standing. And so what that means is I went to school for a really long time to become a land use planner. And whereas this is all I look at, and I work personally, my practice and my firm, I work in rural Alberta. For the most part, I do the odd urban thing, but I typically work for municipalities. And my phone typically rings when municipalities I've worked in are aware that they may have a challenging application in front of them and they want extra support. They want to make sure they cross their T's and dot their I's through the process. So I work for Ponoka County, I work for the town of Rimbey, I work for some municipalities up north. I really just work throughout the province in places where also they don't have enough work for a permanent planner, or the budget for one either. So I work kind of everywhere, and as well for Bashaw, I helped draft the land use bylaw and municipal development plan. It was municipal development plan too. In 2018.
Yes, Vicinity Planning helped us design our strategic plan, land use bylaw, and municipal development plan. And that was, I think we started the process in 2018.
I think so.
And I guess the year on the land use bylaw,
Yeah.
it was finalized and approved in 2018.
And so that was done as a direct result of the Municipal Government Act was updated around that time, so we had to, most municipalities were busy updating everything. And so I work on those documents as well, and I help municipalities with their structure plans. Pretty much if it's in part 19 of the MGA or part 17 of the MGA, that's what I usually help municipalities with. And from time to time, I do work with developers. I've done work with some First Nations as well. Oh, and I should add, so in addition to that past work, Teresa calls me on other applications too from time to time. So.
I have some slightly more technical questions if administration is perhaps able to address them for me. And again, I think most of us sitting around this table are neophytes at this, right? I mean, I think it's pretty atypical for a direct control to be something a new council is dealing with in the first 6 months. So forgive me, administration, if some of these are questions that are a little basic. But can you just explain the land use bylaw to me in very simple terms, in terms of like the definitions needed? So I have this vision in my mind, and it's a complete hypothetical that, you know, Service Credit Union picks up, they leave and have an empty building, and they want to turn into a funeral home. They want to turn into an auction mart, something like that. Or is there a place where I can find the definitions of those? And is there a place within the land use bylaw that I can see clearly, you know, if Service were to become a funeral home, is that A-okay? If they want to become an auction mart, like how would I go about finding that out? I guess would be my first question. My second question, again, nothing against Service, I don't think they're leaving, but it's just the hypothetical I had in my brain. And let's say they did go and they want to become a funeral home, would they need to submit an application, a development permit? So two-pronged question, where do I go on the land use bylaw to find, you know, these definitions and that type of thing? And two, if there's a change of use, say from bank to funeral home or bank to auction mart, what would it look like for them?
Right. So there is an extensive definition section embedded within the land use bylaw. And so it covers quite a substantial amount of definitions, however, not all. And so then the other part is the actual zoning map. There's a map embedded as well, where you can go and it's color coded and it tells you by color what zone and what's allowed in there. And I guess I kind of call a zone as a bit of a recipe for what can happen in that area. And so then within the index, you can look up the zone. So let's say, for example, the banking area is central commercial. So then you would look up the corresponding central commercial zone within the bylaw, and then it gives you a list. There's a big chart in there on one side that says, hey, these are all the things that are a go. And then on the other side, these are all the things that are a maybe go. If I could use, you know, some really simplistic terminology, I apologize. It's 7 o'clock. I've had a big day.
We're new. We need it.
My apologies. But so, and then within the discretionary, usually it depends. And a lot of times we advertise to the different areas adjacent, saying, okay, if this was to go in here, or is there going to be a problem? And so it's advertised. And a lot of times we use several different ways to advertise. So, and it's also listed and prescripted within the bylaw, which ways we advertise and notify. And if there's something that is occurring that isn't really clear on either column, then it's typically like we look at it and see how it fits and how it could potentially impact the area. And then a lot of times we ask for more information to make a better determination. Okay, will this work, or is there going to be some impacts we need to consider, you know, in processing this application? So typically when I'm processing the application, it's pretty simple when it's a deck or garage or whatever, right? But where if there's other impacts that may, you know, substantially have like an impact on the area that, or something that is unknown or it's particularly new, then a lot of times we ask for more information, or we have to do additional research to see how that use can impact the area. I don't know if there's.
Yeah, what I'll add is if the use is not listed. So your example, let's say it's in C1 and nowhere in here does it say funeral home or something equivalent. You would be asked to amend this bylaw.
So you have to open up the whole thing and do 3 readings.
And a public hearing if you need to amend it. And so typically there's the cost of that and the applicant's responsible for it. The reality is no matter how many times we look at a land use bylaw, we're not going to predict everything people are going to do. I call it a living document. It's your one bylaw that I would say is amended frequently and should be amended frequently because you need to reflect your community. What is unique about the application in front of you is there's none of those rules. The rules for this is a direct control district is 1 page that makes it very clear that development authority, and I quote, the development authority in the DC district shall be council. One of the clauses as well says the development authority may require additional information to properly evaluate the proposed development in terms of compliance with this bylaw and any applicable statutory plans. So this area, there's no use list. There could be, but that wasn't done at the time when we drafted this bylaw. So at this point, council can say that it's ultimately council's just their discretion on how they want to proceed.
Is there a list of uses currently approved for direct control in Bashaw or?
No. The best we have is all permitted and discretionary uses shall be as prescribed in any previously written statutory plans. So your MDP, there is no other ones in this area. You don't have an area redevelopment plan or an area structure plan, at least not to my knowledge. And then there is development standards, but none of it, all other development requirements shall be at the discretion of the development authority. In determining the appropriate requirements for development in the DC district, the development authority shall have regard to any provisions in this bylaw for similar uses or developments. Have regard does not mean you have to follow. As well, in the absence of an adopted area structure plan or area redevelopment plan, the regulations which will be applied to the development will be those which, in the opinion of the development authority, in this case council, are compatible with the character of existing surrounding uses and adjacent designated land use districts. So that's all council has to follow. If council doesn't want to follow any of this, just like if a use from a private developer wasn't in place, council would need to amend this. You are required to follow what is in your statutory plans and your land use bylaw.
If I may continue, Mr. Chair.
Please do.
I have so many questions. I spent a whole bunch of time researching. One of the things that I'm confused about, and again, I direct this to administration, is family wellness center. And I look at the application, it's a family wellness center, there's a definition, it's a center to support and promote the well-being of families. But is family wellness center something that's defined within our land use bylaw, or is there something approximate to it? Because quite frankly, I typed in family wellness center Alberta to get a better look at what this might look like elsewhere. And I found a family wellness center in Leduc. I found another family wellness center in Airdrie, and they offer chiropractic services, Reiki, those types of things. And so when I look at this, is that what the definition is in our land use bylaw, or is there anything close to it, or is it even defined?
I can jump in. There is no definition that fits this in our land use bylaw. But part of the challenge that administration has had, and part of the reason why we've commented the application is vague, is we aren't entirely positive what all is included in the Family Wellness Center. And that's part of our challenge. And that's why we've asked for more clarity on that, so that we can determine for sure whether one of our definitions works, whether something is close enough or not. So right now, we probably can't answer that based on the information we have to date.
But if something were close, we'd be able to use that definition.
Potentially, it's hard to say without knowing exactly what's proposed. And I know for me is when I'm processing development permits, typically when in doubt, amend your bylaw to make sure that it's clear.
So we would literally have to open up the land use bylaw and potentially insert a definition.
Potentially.
Mr. Chair, I have another question.
You're on a roll.
Twice in the application process, there's a weighty amount of correspondence in here. But twice, the applicants asked what will happen with the zoning, should we approve this change, but then the tenant fails to secure funding. And so they want to know if they'll be able to go back to the old zoning or not, or how does it work? So maybe to rephrase the question, if we approve a change to this direct control for whatever it is, do all the old things they were approved for stay approved? Or they have to, go through this process again, come back before council and have us deliberate on whether we want to go backwards and turn back the clock, so to speak.
I think I hear two questions, if I can jump in.
Yes, please.
So, and maybe I didn't hear two questions, but we'll double check. So the first one is, if this gets approved and the applicants don't choose to proceed, one of the clauses in here, and I'm not entirely sure which one, typically you have 12 months to start the development, and it's usually either 2 or 3 years to finish it. If that doesn't happen, the development permit is typically considered null and void. It's a bit more complicated than that. For example, if someone's building a house, they start it, but they don't finish it in 3 years, but all they have left to do is paint something, you're not going to tell them to stop doing it. So your actual implementation of that becomes a lot more challenging, right? And that's why there's always discretion. But when you look at a direct control district, I think council could probably put in some clauses related to it because it is at council's discretion, and as you see in that district, it doesn't give a lot of guidance. I think the second question I heard was what happens to the uses already approved? I'm not entirely sure. Oftentimes properties have more than one development permit approved on them. For example, you can have an auto body shop that also has a U-Haul sales out of the side. And so they're two distinct individual permits. I think we would need to potentially get some clarity on that from legal in terms of, does a new permit get rid of the old ones? Is that something council can do in a direct control zone? And that's the point of clarity I want to confirm. And with that process, if the development doesn't go forward, I think I'm going back to the first question now, and they've gotten approval for something that they're not going to use, the applicant can also just come in and say, we no longer are going to do this, and basically just say we're not, we have 3 years to 12 months to start it, 3 years to finish it. It's not going to happen. And I think formally notify, there's a way that you could work with that. It's not typical. So the applicant may also just need to apply for a new permit to undo it. There's a lot of different possibilities for how to proceed with that.
Well, and I thought there was something within the land use bylaw that determines where if, a site is inoperable or hypothetically vacant, then, so for example, we have a feed mill located in town, and that feed mill has been inoperable for many years. And so, for someone to come in there and operate a feed mill where right now it's not actually even zoned as a feed mill anymore. So they could not actually continue as a feed mill at that location.
Yeah, so you'd be going through an amendment process to change your use again, or sorry, not amendment process, a development permit to change your uses again.
So there is potential, and this is just to answer their question, because it is in the correspondence twice. but they would potentially have to.
More than likely, you'd have to go through the process again. If you're gonna change your uses from what was approved, it's a change of use.
And this is my service credit union example all over again, even if they want to become a funeral home, I'm sure the ladies there are loving me saying this, right? But they would then go through the process.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Chair, may I continue?
You bet.
I have so many questions. One of the points that I'm having trouble wading through, because it's like 8 bajillion pages of content, and I think that's the official number when I looked. But it seems to me that this has been deemed incomplete 4 times, if I'm not mistaken. I'm wondering if you can just briefly help me understand each incomplete, like, what was the information that was missing? So just to give you a clarifying point, I noticed at the beginning, there's this application that says owner operator, and then later on in the same package, there's another application that's virtually identical with a different operator listed. How does that process unfold?
So we received the first application, and the application, basically, there was no phone number on it, there was no mailing address. The challenge was confirming receipt of payment, as the payment came in through a different numbered company, which we had to interact with them to confirm that the payment was received. It was actually connected to this application. And then the site plan and commentary within our letter is listed there, where there was no site plan included. No, like they mentioned a bit about a sign and stuff on there, and I believe the first letter lists out what is missing. And then there's also provided a timeline on that first letter. And so then there was a response which did provide the phone number and a mailing address, and then some commentary specific to what was requested. And then a descriptor about same services. And they describe a different organization or a different functionality in town as part of their application. However, we don't typically accept that as a description of services. And so then it also indicates a letter of authorization. However, the letter of authorization is only signed by one of the applicants on the original application. So we had, an agent that was attempting to interact with us on it. However, that agent was not listed on the original application whatsoever. So looking at the application, we're very confused as to, who is the actual owner and the actual applicant. So it's not very clear in that aspect.
And I'll jump in on that one. We always have to be very cautious of getting proper landowner authorization. As in other places, I'm not going to name any names, there have been times where unfortunately children have tried to represent their parents and have tried to basically sell their property out from under them or things like that. So we are very, very clear that we have proper authority to speak with whomever is contacting us. And so it might seem a little obsessive that, we were trying to clarify this so much, but it is something that due to FOIP and legalities, we have to have as crystal clear as we can get.
And I believe many of the other applications are pretty clear where the incompletion lies. Authorization from the business partners, specifically designating who is the agent authorized. And so, and there was just a bunch of clarity required. And so I'm not sure if there's really a whole lot that you can add as well, Liz. But
The only thing I will add is that in processes like this, first, it's very unfortunate that the Municipal Government Act termed it incomplete and complete letters. They're not friendly names of this. What these are is asking for additional clarification so that we have better understanding of the application in front of us. Again, we'd issue these types of letters for a deck or a change of use. And the language we have to use is what the municipal government gave us. And so the second piece I would add about it is that with each submission of information, typically we get a better idea of what someone is applying for. So then we ask new questions and new requirements come up. So based on the most recent information submitted, the questions in front of council tonight, or the recommendations for the information we need, is different than what's been seen before, because once we had a better idea of what was being proposed, albeit there's still some vagueness and still some clarity we don't have, we started doing more research into similar uses that exist in the province, including talking to our local health authority about this proposal as well, so that they're aware of it and can also provide us information. So it's due diligence that is very common on any application, and especially for Bashaw that hasn't had an application like this before. So that is why those lists change. And again, unfortunately, depending on what could be submitted next, we might have another question. But the Municipal Government Act and the clause in the land use bylaw gives us that latitude to continue to ask for information if we need it. Even if we were to issue a complete letter, we can still ask for more information.
We're able to ask for more information up until a decision is made.
Yes, the information has to be pertinent to the request
Right.
and what we're looking at. Like if somebody was asking to build a house, I can't say to them, well, how many cats are you gonna have? Like it wouldn't be pertinent to the application.
Right.
Unless you had that as a requirement in the bylaw, then I guess I could ask about their cats, but
There's a note for the next time. Mr. Chair, how many continue?
Actually, I'm going to step back one, going back to the question about what if we approve it and can they go back to the old one? Can we put such a clause in the development permit that at their request, we go revert to the original land or development permit?
it's very atypical. I would need to do a little bit more homework on that before I can answer that. Because typically any use would require, any change in use requires a new development permit. So I would suggest it might be working with the applicant that if development is not secure, proceeding by 12 months, similar to what we have already, then the development permit becomes null and void. Something like that. But again, we have 12 months as a guiding rule in here that Teresa says the development authority for a non-direct control district would have to abide by. I think council might have a bit more leeway in that, but I would recommend that I do a bit more research and get back to you.
So out of curiosity, if they don't start within 12 months, does it just means that the permit is null and void and the old is the same, or is it once you've changed it, you've changed it?
I believe that once you've changed it, but it also, again, look at the example I gave of an auto body shop with a U-Haul. You can have more than one active development permit on the property.
That makes sense.
So.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It can be done. It would be when council gets to the point, if council does get to the point of approving it, that's something that I can have clarity provided to you. Even at the next meeting, I can provide you more information on that.
Well, and typically in the past, I've had other locations where before their development permit expires, they provide an update on what activities are going on and they request an extension.
Yes, and extensions, there's somewhere in here, there's a clause about the time extension can happen with a written request.
Well, I have a comment on that before I go back to my line of question. The reason I brought that whole line up is it's my understanding within the direct control now, it's kind of a hodgepodge of things. There's a whole bunch of uses that were approved. And one of the ones that was approved is some form of camping. I don't know the details, whether it's just overnight, whether it's longer term, whatever. But to me, with where this seems to be headed, as some type of medical facility or something like that, the camping doesn't seem congruent with it to me. And so that's where I'm trying to sort out, are we approving this but keeping camping as a specific example, if that's something we could look into? Or... Well,
and that's something that, again, depending on the will of council, that there could be a clause in the development permit that says camping is not permitted. And so typically as the newest permit, then that would trump the old one if that was allowed under something else. Okay. So it really will come down to the technicalities of drafting that.
However, like with respect to our indigenous populace, if they should to want to include, let's say, construction of a teepee and, you know, the ongoing use of teepees and they sleep in them, or, you know, as part of the process, then, you know, that would definitely be information that would be advisable to include in the application. Right, and that we would be aware of versus just saying flat out no camping.
And that's where, you know, no camping, Big Belly Jamboree style versus, right? Like, those are the details. That's a great example of the type of details that would help us understand and be able to provide recommendations to council on how to proceed with this.
I have a question about 24-hour use, because that's part of this application, right? Is that obviously, given the line of work that they're looking to do, I believe it's page 2 of their, or 3 officially, but it's page 2 on our bottom sheet. It says identify the daily hours of operation be 24 hours. And so here again, what does that mean? And is there the ability to put conditions on what happens during certain blocks of those 24 hours? Or if we were to approve something for 24 hours, is that just it and it's whatever somebody wants to do?
If we get a better understanding of what would be happening in those 24 hours, I think we'd be better able to answer that question. So you can definitely condition things in different ways, and conditioning of how things like that would work. And that is where, once we have more details on that, we'd be working with our regional partners and other service providers, including the applicants, to determine what that would look like and how to do that. I don't think Teresa or I, or even council, now correct me if I'm wrong, would know necessarily what should operate at what hours of the day. So that's the type of information that would be very helpful to be able to help proceed and process.
I will hold off for now.
Yeah, thank you so much. One of the things you just mentioned there that is interesting is conditions. And so when I'm looking at the administration's recommendations, a whole number of recommendations on information we as a development board. And I noticed there's an on-site safety plan. To me, that's things like fire and items like that. But when I was reviewing direct control districts around the province, one of the things I observed is that fire safety plans are often a condition of approvals. They're not information that's collected at the application stage. They're moved to be a condition. Could you explain again? I don't have the answer. That's why I'm asking this. What would be the difference in asking for this information at this stage versus making it a condition in approval?
So there's a couple of reasons on why you do different things, and it depends on the type of application in front of you. And so if we took a look at a house, we might, someone's building a new garage, even simpler. And they, you know what, I'm drawing like on a good example. I don't like my house one anymore.
Well, typically our standard development permit requires a condition of obtaining a proper building permit, electrical and plumbing permit. So let's say, for example, like your garage is a prime example. So we will say, yes, your garage is approved based on where you want to put it on the lot. And so as a condition of development, we're not going to get you to construct the garage and have a proper building permit before we approve the permit. So that quite often is embedded as a standard clause into a development permit.
And so more complicated development permits, the more details we typically ask for upfront. And that enables the development authority, whether it be administration in a regular district or council, to have more information to make their decision. And when we're looking at a facility such as this one, we want to make sure that the safety of both the on-site users and the surrounding neighborhood are taken care of. So that's why we'd be looking at that. And again, something like the transportation impact analysis. The reason you need that up front is that the last thing you want to do is say, yeah, go and build this, but bring us this, change your use, but bring us your TIA before you actually open your facility. Because what if the TIA says the roads simply cannot handle it? You need to put up 2 intersections with full lights or, these things. Well, now someone's proceeding and believing they can do a development when those costs might make it so they can't, right? So the more information we can get up front, I believe the better for both that applicant, but also the municipality.
Mr. Chair, can I get some clarity there? Because
Absolutely.
it builds into a question I had, and I'm glad you brought up traffic, because I mean, it's something we've heard about a few times, I'm sure, as individuals. In fact, at a recent meeting, we've heard about that neighborhood. If a certain individual parks their vehicles out, it shuts down the neighborhood. But one of the things I'm stuck on here, and please help me with this, with the traffic impact assessment, how can you assess the impact of this development before its users are in place? Like, to me, that we're putting the cart before the horse, or
Exact opposite on that one.
Okay.
Transportation engineers have calculations they use, they have models. They are phenomenal at doing this, whether it's for a subdivision of 400 houses in Red Deer or a 1 new use and building. They would look at the number of beds, they would look at the number of anticipated staff, and then they would be able to also look at the number of visitors. So by doing that advanced math, they're able to confirm, again, you need to know your number of beds and your number of staff, and that'll have a big impact. The other component that's really important in this area is the school times. So at pickup and drop off, putting more cars into that area could cause substantial problems, especially with kids crossing the roads and such. So we want to make sure that this proposed development won't impact those existing uses. So the right experts know how to do this and then do it for a living. I couldn't do it for you, but I'm not a transportation engineer. So it's about having the right person utilize the tool that they know how to use.
is this something that would typically be asked of the developer, or is it
Yes.
something the municipality?
Most municipalities do not fund development. So most municipalities, unless they own the land, if I can caveat that. So in pretty much all municipalities in Alberta, if someone is doing a private development, no matter what that development is, the developer, the landowner initiating that would pay for these things. Otherwise, we'd be paying for the person who wants to build any use, right? Whether it's a family wellness center or it's a funeral.
Sticking with the line of requests that the Knight asked for here, I suspect in short order, I was wondering a little bit more about this item, and it is capacity of existing medical infrastructure in the town of Bashaw. And so again, this is where I'm having trouble squaring this. How is a developer supposed to gather that information? Like, how would they go about it? To me, that seems like something that Alberta Health Services would have like a checklist for and say, here's the health services in your town. Am I on the right track there?
It generally, so we did reach out to Alberta Health Services. Generally, that the applicants would approach Alberta Health Services and confirm that right now Bashaw is serviced by however many doctors, there's so many ambulances in the region, whatever that is, and clinics and all of that information. And between them and Alberta Health Services, I can't confirm exactly because I've never been on that side. They would be able to determine if the current capacity of services can handle whether it's an additional 50 people. So, and this is where the number of beds is so important in determining if, if 2 new people move to town, our capacity for our healthcare system in Bashaw is not going to collapse. Or, we're not going to have compromised services for other people that are already here. But if 500 show up, it's a different type of thing. So, for example, something like the Big Valley Jamboree, when they do have a huge influx of people, has to look at that service and how are they going to maintain that service. And that's actually part of their planning for it. And I'm using an extreme example, because it is such a huge influx where they have to potentially look at bringing in additional support to, you know, paid contractors to help with the ambulance services and everything because of that event. Again, this is not that big, but it's the same concept of confirming the capacity of the medical system and service providers in Bashaw and the area.
Is this something that's typically placed on the developer to do, or is this something that the municipality could initiate on its own?
Without knowing those details, we wouldn't be able to initiate it. And so typically it is part of an application, and those details are something that we would be able to get. We would be happy to work with the applicant and the service provider and support that initiative. But typically, again, if it's going to take time and money, usually the municipality doesn't do that because it's a private developer, private interests, private profit, right? So it's.
I have one more question on the bullet point list, and then I have one last question, so.
Carry on.
The very last item on the bullet list is an environmental public health review. Now, to me, environmental public health, my exposure to them over my line of work is when there's a flu outbreak or something like that, environmental public health shows up to the school and they do this and that. Are we asking to figure out who has the flu in the building, or what does this mean?
No,
In a
please.
school, that's what they do.
Please, the flu leads to other conversations about other medical things that I do not want to be involved in my industry. What we're talking about there is the Alberta Health Services as a team.
Well, they have a licensing process, and I believe it's due where they walk through and do an inspection on site, you know, and evaluate, is there going to be food served, and double check if there is also occupancy. So like with fire and whatnot, and then how is that all gonna work? And then as well care plans, and you know, I truly, from what I understand is you basically contact the health inspector and inquire for a licensed facility, what are the requirements from a public health perspective?
And then the health inspector will walk them through for the rest.
Correct.
So like we have building codes and safety codes, which they'll have to meet. Any change in use, you have to have a safety code, building code inspector, but they look at it from a very different perspective than environmental health does. So it's rounding out the look at the actual building and how it operates before people are using it. And it's all about that health and safety component of the users of the site.
I have one last question, and I'll happily yield the floor. This is no longer about the bullet point list or anything like this, and I suspect it's probably a question to the CAO, but perhaps Ms. Armitage will be able to help. One of the things that gets me is that this being a direct control, it puts it completely in our hands. And I mean, I like to think I'm good at a lot of things, but development is pretty new to me. And being a little facetious here, my general question is, are there other zones or other areas in this municipality that would be suited for a facility like this? That's kind of my first aspect of the question. And my secret ulterior motive is, so it's not me deciding, it's the development authority or potentially the SDAB, the appeals board. That's my first question. Is there another? And my second question that pairs with it, as a municipality that's committed to, you know, hearing from our residents, that's committed to acting on reconciliation, etc. And again, this is to administration. Are there possibilities to explore relationships directly with the foreign nations of Musqueam, in which we can work together wherever this facility goes, whether it's at this direct control zone, whether it's somewhere else? You know, to me, those are elected officials representing those nations. And so building, to me, the relationship is a politician's job. So I know your administration, but my first question is about other areas and uses. My second is, what are the possibilities that exist on a political level to work directly with the nations to find a solution, whether this is the solution or potential alternatives, what pathways exist for us as a council.
Do you want me to take the first question about the land use designation?
Sure.
Okay. Without a better understanding of exactly what the application is with details outlining the uses, we cannot tell you, I cannot comfortably tell you what other use in your bylaw may fit. My suspicion, and it's only a suspicion, is that right now we don't have this type of a use contemplated. And so if it's not a direct control district, we would have to open up the land use bylaw, amend the definitions, amend a zone, and do that. As a direct control district, it's very clear that the development authority in the DC district shall be council. So if council doesn't want to look at this, you either look at amending the zone, which would mean you'd have to talk with the applicant and basically put the application on hold. And then they would have to agree to have it reinitiated once the zoning is changed. Because there's timelines, and a land use bylaw amendment typically takes a couple months to do because you have to have a public hearing and go through a process. The timelines for the development permit would expire and it would be deemed refused. So either you get permission from the applicant to go through that process and they agree to let their development permit sit and put that in writing, or you turn it down because it doesn't meet what you guys aren't comfortable doing it in a DC district. And then once changes have been made, then they could look at potentially reapplying after that timeline. Or alternatively, with the even opening up the direct control district, the Municipal Government Act does allow council to delegate responsibility for issuing the permit to administration. Your land use bylaw doesn't allow that. So right now you can't. You guys and your former council made it clear that if it's in a direct control district, council wants to be looking at it. And so an appeal process has changed, and that's all outlined in the Municipal Government Act. So does that answer your question?
That answers my first one, and just reminding my second question is about interaction between council, the four nations directly. Is there a way that we can bridge some of this to create a dialogue that's meaningful and substantive? Does administration have recommendations there? And again, I know it's in the realm of politics, so not the same realm that you work in, but I'm just wondering if you got ideas on that.
Well, and if you're looking at it completely external of this application and the potential of other locations within the municipality, I think council quite likely could sit down and have a dialogue with many bands of the, many chiefs of the existing bands that have stepped forward and have dialogue specific to what areas could be, or dialogue about the possibility of, of how it could look. But it's also tricky too, because with this application as it exists at this juncture in time, we clearly have a liaison working on their behalf who is, at the forefront of our interactions at this juncture in time. And so they have deemed authorized agents being Lucy Smolsick and Audrey Ward. And so we've heard prevalently from Lucy Smolsick and James Carpenter. However, we really haven't heard a ton or had a dialogue with Audrey Ward. And so therefore, I guess there's no reason why additional dialogue directly with Audrey Ward could not occur. In order to possibly support some additional communication on this application.
And just to follow up, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. One of the recommendations that I believe here from administration, it's quite lengthy. One of the recommendations is actually to, approach an elder and bring them into this process. Where does that recommendation come from? Where does that fit in all of this?
So there's two options before council. The first one has 3 motions. The second one is the refusal, which is not administration's recommendation at this point in time. Just want to reiterate that. The second motion, or the first one, sorry, my computer died, so I got to go analog. So the first one is about requesting additional information, using that formal language of incomplete, because we have to. The second one is to request the Bear Hill Family Wellness Center and Young Spirit Winds engage with the town and a third party and a Maskwacis elder in the spirit of reconciliation to facilitate constructive dialogue. Administration.
Would that third party be?
We don't know. I would suggest that that would be actually a conversation to be had with Young Spirit Winds and an elder to help bring us together. Right now, our perspective is we're not talking with the ultimate users, and we want to have that dialogue and that conversation and learn about what it is that they envision and help them through our government mandated processes while having a really constructive and healthy dialogue. And we're just thinking there's got to be Maskwacis elders, there's got to be third parties, possibly AHS, Community Futures. There's all kinds of different organizations out there. There's private mediators. There's a ton of people that it could be, but we don't know who that is.
Okay.
And it really is just an idea to start that dialogue between ultimately the users of this space that we would want, if the application does proceed, that I imagine we would want to integrate into our community.
And again, I'm sorry, I'm building off of this. Would these be face-to-face discussions? Because I'm reading through memes and emails, and I think about my past life in business and Drumheller, and anytime that we went through development, you know, I got told to either pick up the phone or march down to town hall and not leave until it's done, which I'm not recommending here. But to me, and again, I see with young people all the time in particular, right? I mean, they'll text for anything, but they will not pick up the phone. Would this mediation, facilitation, dialogue, whatever, would the encouragement be that this should be a sit down, this should be in person or teleconference, and not just playing the email game?
So we didn't go to those details. Again, I would recommend that we want to develop that with all the parties at the table. I actually have a mediation certificate and conflict resolution certificate. I would not step into this. Let me be very clear about that. It would be a complete conflict. But I would strongly suggest that we want to do it in person. Obviously, COVID restrictions change weekly. It feels like some days. So we would have to be cognizant of that, but I would definitely want to encourage that face-to-face interaction that is a lot more personal.
Chief Standingontheroad, could I, not to put you on the spot, but could I invite your thoughts on sitting down directly with you folks?
Just hearing what you guys are discussing. And I like the fact that gentleman asking questions. We don't know the municipality act. We operate under the Indian Act, which suppresses us in doing development. But when it comes to trying to heal our people, we don't have the space for facilities. And the fastest way to do it was to look for outside sources. And James Carpenter had been kind enough to do it on his own to advocate for us. But he also said that I need to learn from you guys. And one of the first things that I always say, we have to create a relationship. And if you want to meet the chiefs face to face, send an invitation. And there's protocol. And my cultural person is here, he can explain what's the process is. And I realized that what we're bringing in to try and bring to the community for your assistance, you're learning by the book of how to deal with us, by the laws, your laws. We have our laws of how we deal with our people, even Tasco and Paducah, and we work well with them. We invite them, have coffee, maybe have supper with them, discuss our personal problems of what we're having experiencing with our people, our young parents, and all the suicide, and everything is happening, it's getting overwhelming that we're just practically numb, we're just operating, surviving. When it comes to creating facilities for on our community, it's a 2-year process. We have to go through that red tape. And they bring in consultants that don't know anything about us. We have to teach them first of how we operate and for them to understand what it is that we want and need. And then we go through there to the department. A lot of times we just have to go to Ottawa and sidestep Indian Affairs. So it's a good idea to sit face to face and talk about what it is that we need. Then a lot of this discussion that you're in a dilemma with can be put to rest and actually come to an agreement of how we can work together. I realize it's a scary process. Bringing Indians to your community, which have been your neighbors for a long time. And when it comes to reconciliation, it's being thrown around loosely, but it's a hard thing to do.
Talking is the first step.
Yes. Rather than deciding on what our plight is going to be. Get to know us.
It's in the Peace Road. It's in the Peace one.
Yeah, let's say a few words.
Please.
And how do we address you?
Chair?
Chair or?
Chair, Mr. Mayor, hey you, fairly informal.
And I like to thank you for allowing us to sit here at your council meeting.
Welcome anytime.
I'm a band counselor for Montana, and he's my chief. I've been in this position for 11 years. I've been sitting on this board for 11 years, the young spirit. A lot of assumption here. I started this 11 years ago, when I first got into council. Because in 2013, we lost 47 children to suicide. The youngest was 9 years old. And I've been pushing to find a facility, because on reserve, the funding the government gives for facilities like this. And to answer your question, the family wellness centers you're looking for, look for them on First Nations. That's what you want to look, not Red Deer, not, that's where to answer your question. Yeah. But I've been working on this, and our partner, our business partner, James Carpenter, we got to meet him. He said, I have a facility in Bashaw. And I've been pushing them. Audrey's our director. She's the ED of Young Spirit. I'm the longest serving a board member in this organization. It's owned by 4 nations. The chiefs have all the say. But me, I represent Montana. There's 4 of us, 4 council members that's on this board. So if you want information to sit down with us, I can tell you right from 2011 to now, like the struggles we had. But it seems like the policies you guys work with, the assumptions you guys have about First Nations people, you gotta sit down with our chiefs our council. People abroad from the community that are grassroots people that have been here for 500 years. The struggles we go through today, it's tough to be a leader, have your hands tied. How can I help this kid? Because we run a program that's 12 to 17 years old. And why I'm looking for a facility like this is it's a 24-hour service. And within that 24 hours, it's not like people are going to be walking around town for 24 hours. There's going to be stipulations that are going to be put in there this time you have to be in bed. There's going to be parents in one section of the corridor, but they don't get to see each other till maybe a Sunday every week, every Sundays, to answer your questions. But it's not like people are going to be running around town, and there's going to be stipulations, there's going to be a rule of policy. And I really like to see it go, because the opportunity for Bashaw is horrendous too, financially. There'll be a lot of jobs created for people, as you said, how much the average person makes here. They'll be laughing 3 times more what they'll be making. The sports, the arena here, they'll be renting us. The golf courses during the summertime. There'd be a lot of opportunity for Bashaw residents, like business-wise. Because I played hockey here when the National Stars back in 87, 88. I played hockey here. And as a kid, when I was growing up, my parents, my grandparents played bingo in town here. We got to walk to the movie theater and wait for them. People were really nice to us back then. It's not the first time I think we're ever coming here. I come golfing over here. But I'd sure like to see the opportunity for us to work with you. That's all you guys have to do. Send an invitation to the chief. You want the council to sit on it? Surely it would be welcome. So, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Kyle, do you have any more questions?
Exhausted my list temporarily.
Oh, good. I mean, what is the will of council? Brian, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. I've learned a lot tonight. But at this point, I don't have any questions, no.
Chief Standing on the Road, before you leave, I'd sure like to exchange contact information with you so we can set up a meeting.
I think that I would like to, I don't know if there's any more discussion, but I would like to meet face to face with whatever parties and sides. But I think it's really important for us to understand exactly what the uses are, and so that I agree that sometimes assumptions are made. Yes, I think it's really important to go and get all of the details. You know, I realized that I had some, like Kyle, I had some questions around always sending an incomplete letter, and those were answered tonight. But I also recognize that when it talks about description in the development permit, it's just one line, and that's really hard to understand what that means. And maybe that's where we can develop a description of what a family wellness center is. Like Chief Standing on the Road suggested, it's might be different in an Aboriginal community than it is in our community, and so I'd like to explore that further. So if there are no other questions, I would like to move that we all three of the option one. It's a lot of words. Do I have to read it all?
Yep.
Do I? Okay. I would like to direct administration to request the applicant submit the following additional information to enable council to make an informed decision on the proposed Bear Hills Down Wellness Center. Confirmation of exact uses to be included on the site, including detailed description of each use activity. Confirm the number of beds to be utilized for overnight guests and their reasons rationale for the use of the overnight stay. Confirm the age of guests, duration of stay, ratio of guests to supervisors, and type of supervision provided for guests and visitors. Business plan, operation plan, building access plan, on-site safety plan, off-site community safety, capacity of existing medical infrastructure in the town of Bashaw, confirmation of providers and governance structure for healthcare related services and childcare related services, integration of guests and visitors into the existing Bashaw community, traffic impact assessment, environmental public health review. I would also like to move.
Well, we got to do one motion at a time.
Okay, one motion at a time, so we don't do it. Well, I was reading option one.
Yeah.
Okay, so my first motion.
Besides when they need to provide the
Oh,
information.
what, could I ask what reasonable is?
A very important consideration is that in the letters, we do note that an extension can be done. So 1 month, 2 months, they can also submit it quicker, right? So
What would be considered reasonable?
typically, there is no governance on this. That's the MGA silent on it, our land use bylaw silent on it. Typically, we do, for whatever reason, 2 weeks, a month, 6 weeks, 2 months, like we, but again, there's no rhyme or reason,
I think a
so.
month should be adequate, shouldn't it?
Was the intention for us in subsequent motions, and then perhaps it's in fact an additional motion that's been made to engage in dialogue with
Yeah,
the chiefs and perhaps council and others. So I don't know, I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'll link here if our second motion needs to inform the first one,
Right.
because if it's going to take more than a month to make all the arrangements.
I was just gonna ask that question
And that's
too.
where I was going to.
Yeah.
So, and again, that's where, for example, if you chose 2 months, 6 weeks, you can come back and say,
So the timeline would be dependent on the meeting that takes place within this second motion.
not necessarily, because ultimately we can't force a meeting to happen, right? So
Right.
maybe it doesn't happen. I would like to hope it would. I think that would be
Right.
fantastic.
Yeah.
But the concrete list of items that you're requesting, if that, say you say 2 months and they submit it in a week, great. But say they contact an engineer who says, okay, yeah, we can do that traffic impact assessment, but it's actually gonna take us 9 weeks. Then if they inform us of that, there can be a written from council to them agreement to extend it.
So, but can I ask though, can the meeting happen before the,
Yes,
okay, that's what I'd like to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we still need I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We still
So I
need
would- I
the
would like
letter to
say,
meet the requirements of
what's
the
date
MGA.
today?
March 7th today.
March 7th, okay, I would like to say, hang on a minute, sorry, I just looked at the calendar. March 7th, so I would say by May 9th. That gives them enough time, and if they get it in a week or 10 days, that's great,
That's better,
or
yeah.
even better. But it at least gives them time, because some of this is a little more, just, more work for them. That doesn't, so if it comes in early, we can still have a meeting and make a decision early.
Absolutely, you're not, that is your
That's
max.
just giving them the opportunity.
Exactly.
Okay.
And realistically, if they do need an extension on that, they just have to ask.
Yeah, and then council would issue another letter following the incomplete wording and say, as per the request, an extension has been granted until 2028, like whatever.
Yeah.
So it's just a courtesy, I'm offering 2 months as a courtesy to the applicant. But if they get it first earlier, that's great. I sooner the better.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Yes,
Motion is carried.
also like to move to request Bear Hills Family Wellness Center and Young Spirit Winds engage with the town and a third party and a Massachusetts elder in the spirit of reconciliation to facilitate constructive dialogue.
Any discussion on that? All in favor?
Yes.
Carried.
I'm gonna do the third one.
You're on a roll.
I'd like to move that upon receipt of the complete information required, council consider holding, not necessarily for sure, a Bashaw Community Information Session in the spirit of reconciliation. The information session should be held jointly with the town and Massachusetts Elder and a Massachusetts service providers.
Any discussion on that one? All in favor?
Yes.
Carried. Sorry?
We were quite a ways in there.
Yes. Moving on, item 7.3, Fire Department Standard Operating Guidelines, second revision.
If you would like to.
Pardon
I
me?
only had one question. I'll just ask. Can you clarify what service providers are? That like daycare,
No, the Bear Hills service
I think
providers.
just the people who are serving that would serve the center, that there might not be any. I don't know.
The teachers, the daycare providers.
Yeah, it may not be anybody, but there is service providers.
Service providers.
Yeah.
Don't leave now, we're just getting to the good stuff.
Good stuff. Next time, if I don't have to spend half an hour.
Yeah, letting my nose go. Thank you. Thank you.
Chief Leonard.
This should I have done that? Sure. Screw that.
And then there was one.
So they deserted me.
They did.
Sorry, everyone, I'm just gonna send a quick text to Chief Leonard, so he's got my info as well.
Dennis on his way back.
Okay. Can I take a bathroom break, brief intermission?
Hey, that's
Actually, I might
my
do that
choice.
too.
Do we need to recess?
I don't think they've given me a choice.
Well, we no longer have, oh, no, degree of quorum, so.
Comfort break.
I'm just telling him I'm holding you guys off right now. So they
Okay.
don't hurry up.
So I think we pass a whole bunch of motions without Cindy and Jackie all gone.
Like fresh cinnamon buns at every meeting provided by
That's right.
counselors.
We do have quorum.
I vote for blokes.
Ooh.
Oh, God, yeah.
Blokes.
Blokes.
Oh,
bakery and
you're
stuff.
telling me, please
Oh,
makes a
okay.
good donut.
I heard that. I heard their cinnamon buns are pretty good. too.
I have kind of a silly question. What's my email address? Is it rob.bashawcouncil or is it robcouncilbashaw?
I do not know off the top of my head. I'm terribly sorry. Because I don't have my computer in front of me, so, and I don't
Okay. I
have
get
my
it.
email open on my phone.
Rob
I
Bashaw,
love that you
counsel.
just asked that, by the way, and that you don't know the answer.
Well, usually when I put it in, it just pops up. Although, maybe in my contacts are there.
I got it already. I was just trying not to get out of one page.
Yeah, no, I don't have it in here, just your phone number.
Stop auto correcting me.
I'm just gonna take another screenshot.
One by one.
Okay, let's all go hide in the other room.
We still have people on Zoom tuning in.
We do, we have Debbie and Alexa Ruda. Gustav joined us. We still have Sam, we have Stu, we have Todd Shipton, we have Yvonne King.
They have stuff through with us, with
They
the rest of this
have.
agenda.
Thank you.
Good for them.
I'm assuming you don't need me anymore.
I think we're golden. Thanks, Liz.
I still haven't decided which direction I'm driving. But
Well, thank you for your.
Thank you so
assistance.
much. Yes.
absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I am happy to be here to support you guys through this.
Well, there's
Or any
a-
other.
So.
Nope. Wow. Everybody just left to go to the bathroom.
Oh, I came back to, I just taught class, so. I was going, like I was. How are
It's
you?
nice to see you. I
Pleasure's
didn't,
mine.
I couldn't piece it together and then you winked and I was like, oh,
Well, I mean, it was not an inappropriate wink. a
it was,
highway use.
hey, I know you. It's been a while.
You guys got quite the agenda.
Well, you should know.
I thought this was
Around
right
for an
agenda.
item.
It's only 111 pages.
And how many involved?
Wow, wow. No,
Any
I-
robot things?
No, it's currently the highways. the shit.
Yeah, I haven't decided.
Well, if you're going east of Pinoka, I'm gonna be going that way in 10 minutes on. I see, I'll pick you up. How's that? If you hit the ditch, I'll be there for you.
There'd be no one better for it to have the next person behind you, right?
Yeah,
You know?
I'll pick you up.
Drive safe, Liz.
Take care.
George. So this attendance is a good job.
Yeah. I came up
Peter
right
was.
here. There's Sammy's Jack's night and everything, so. How are you, sir?
I'm well, how are you?
Do gallery members have to all?
Well, I don't have 100, so
Pardon?
Do gallery members all have to be known?
you're home performing even I.
Well, how do they
You
do
know
it in
what?
cities? then?
Well, amount of coffee
I
you
don't
drink today.
Well, I'm
That's
on
right.
a big number 5, so
You drink how many of those a day?
not this.
I was gonna say those frappuccinos got a little sugar.
No, I would be bouncing off the wall.
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
was on and left.
This is my 8 PM,
make it through the night,
that's right.
cocktail. Yeah, we gotta. Yeah, that is microphone.
I'm like, I don't know if I should pause recording or not.
Yeah.
Or
No, you'll forget to
insert
turn it
some
back on.
Random music for you there, Brian.
I'm there. I'm there.
Want to hear about the standard operating guidelines.
I tried chiming in last
Instead
time.
of coffee, I just keep drinking. more
Yeah, the
water, so you'll
sound and
notice that-
everything, we just never did.
No,
get
this
it
is
to
full
work.
yet.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So you'll notice that the pace of the agenda will pick up as the night goes
Well,
on.
we could just play you some evening Australian here.
Make them fall asleep.
So where's Brian at? Is he in this?
Arizona.
Oh, yeah, well, who wouldn't want to? I'd be there now.
Some Australian crickets for you, Brian.
I do hear them.
You know, as advanced as we are with technology, it just, sometimes it just doesn't work, right? Nothing like an in-person meeting. I was just, yeah, I was,
Yeah.
maybe I was in the wrong spot.
Not sure what's holding our ladies up. They've done a comfort break. It appears to be
Oh,
comfortable.
What, did they go home?
Well, it's nothing like going to your own home, right?
True.
You know,
Personally.
I've always said, I don't care who you are, where you live. I'm sure you have a lovely shower, but I would prefer my own.
yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, I've done a lot of training and courses over the years, and even if I've got to drive to Calgary, I'd rather drive home 2 hours and sleep in my own bed, my own, right? Then 5 hours in my own bed in my own house is better than 8 hours in a hotel.
Yep. I never sleep well on the first or second night in a hotel.
Sorry. Yeah,
Are we good to go?
we're good. Yeah.
I'm starting to wonder if you guys went to your homes.
No, I'm trying to Liz say bye.
Oh. Okay, so we're back from recess. Fire Department Standard Operating Guidelines, second revision. So yeah, we had the first copy that was sent to us that was
Yeah.
obviously written with your credentials in mind.
Well, no, what had happened there was when Dustin and I talked about that, and I copied that position from Clearwater County. Because I've always said, because when I used to work for a municipality, I always said, if you don't have to reinvent the wheel and copy from somebody else, why wouldn't you just copy from somebody else? Never even thought about it and put that in there. So you'll see the revision, it matches identically to the chief and the deputy chief, because it should be kind of interchangeable. But there's a few other revisions in the bylaw which gives the chief a little bit more leniency with some of the stuff, like creating different auxiliary members to try to encourage recruitment and retention. You know, if we want to start a fire cadet program or something like that, or some fire departments have a fire chaplain, maybe a fundraising auxiliary, maybe there's a group of people that don't want to go to calls, but they want to, whatever. But if you don't have that and or kind of thing, then it's pretty restrictive, right?
And it did catch our eye originally that the requirements and for your position were much higher for the
Well, again,
chief.
Clearwater County posted one. I'm like, well, that's basically verbatim. Us. You know, I cut and paste like the best of them. So.
R&D stands for rip off and duplicate.
Well, it was with full permission, so.
I only have one question, Mr. Chair.
I find that hard to believe.
Famous last words.
Carry on.
The question pertains to page 3 of this segment. Under heading 100. I'm just wondering if after the title fire chief and deputy fire chief, if they were wanting to add an and or assistant fire chief, as they have in literally every other use through the document, or if membership is indeed a separate area where the assistant fire chief is just going to fall under any authorized representative.
That's the way I looked at it. Again, with the delegation there, you kind of covered it. So the role of the assistant fire chief is to support the chief and the deputy chief, right? To take as much administration and stuff like that away so they can focus on what they need to do with recruitment and retention, and to respond to calls. So that's why it fits so well. But yeah, I looked at that and I thought, you know what, it says and or, it says or any authorized representative. So
Yeah, really, once you have that in there, having the fire chief, deputy fire chief is still redundant,
yeah.
but we'll forgive it. Any other questions? Brian, how you doing?
I'm good. I would make that motion.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Yep.
Carried. Uh, 7.4 monthly statement for 2 months.
Right. I missed it in the last one. They added in a new spot and I missed it. My apologies.
Get out of your guys' hair, I gotta drive.
Okay. Thanks, Dennis.
See you guys later. Thanks again.
Rescue Liz if she needs it.
We'll let you have this one if you wanted to duck out too.
But it was good. It I like, it was a little awkward sitting there, I was like, I don't know. Police or what? No, I'm kidding. We could have brought the fire truck down.
You are being recorded, just saying.
You can hose it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See you guys.
See you. Any questions about the monthly statements? Somebody care to receive both of them as information?
Do that.
Both the January 31st, 2022 and the February 28th, 2022 monthly statements as information.
Thank you, Cindy. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Yep.
Motion is carried. .5 library trustee motion request.
I'd like to move to appoint Leslie Lashinsky to the Bashaw Library Board effective March 7th for a period of 3-year term. And also, oh, that's one motion, sorry, I keep wanting to jump ahead.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Yep.
Carried.
And I'd also like to move to appoint Nate Perman to the Bashaw Library Board effective March 7th, 2022 for a 3-year term.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Yep.
Carried. Committee and staff reports. I had no meetings, but I have received a couple of emails on the Bear Hills matter. That I disclosed to Teresa already, and I guess everybody else at our last meeting. That's all I had. Deputy Mayor Gust.
Just a special meeting that we had. And I as well have had emails and well, not, I guess, texts and phone calls regarding the Bear Hills. And I have discussed those with Teresa as well.
Thank you. Councillor Northey.
I had a meeting with the Parkland Regional Library Board. It was good. It was short, or well, an hour and a half, so it wasn't too bad. The one thing I did take from it is that some of the libraries in the region have determined not to charge a fee for library use because in our rural communities, we have very low income families and usually the families who are not low income are capable of buying their own or purchasing books or doing the things that they need to do. And they felt that it was very useful to be able to have that opportunity for low income families. So I thought maybe I would bring that suggestion forward to the library board, which I sit on. And the rec board has not met yet again because I think they're meeting in May because they had no real reason to meet before then. And also I did not receive any emails on Bear Hills, but I did receive 3 visits. So I had a visit with 3 different people around Bear Hills. And I think that's it.
Thank you.
Oh, no, sorry, one more thing. MP Damien Burrick is coming, as you heard last time, to Bashaw, and he is going to meet with us, us being the Bashaw Model of Service team. And so I would like to invite any counselors that would like to come to hear more about that then, or to discuss it with him. I'm also meeting with Minister Luan on March 23rd to talk about our thing. So.
Let me know. Who would like to be there for those?
I will do that. I'll send you a message.
Councillor Oram.
Yes, on February 16th, I had a youth center meeting. At this time, the executive director position and the youth program facilitator position are both vacant. So as such, and still as of last meeting, the facility is closed for use as of right now. I know that there was some activity and content being put online on the Facebook page. But I saw last night that it says that it's under construction, so I'm not totally sure where we're at with that.
Sorry, my apologies, Counselor Oren.
Okay.
What was the date again on that?
February 16th.
Thank you.
They did lift their mandatory vaccination policy. And then it was just asked that I bring forward some information to clarify some stats that were presented in their presentation to council. Brian, you had asked for clarity on the 20, they had used the number 20 individuals. And so Brian had asked, was this 20 attendees of the program? And we were told during the delegation that yes, that was correct. In fact, that is incorrect. There were 20 individuals who completed a survey for FCSS. And so the metrics that were provided in there had to do with those 20 individuals. They did provide me a breakdown of the number of visits per month to the youth center within an age group. The age, they've got two different age group ranges. And so the number of individuals are not tracked as there's no required memberships. It's just strictly number of visits. So they couldn't tell exactly how many children within that age group are visiting, but they did provide me with some content, and I apologize. I had full intentions of printing it off and bringing it with me tonight, and my day just kind of escaped me there. So I can either email that out, I can send it out, or we can present it when we're looking at.
I was planning, I printed off a copy of it.
Okay,
to
yes, because I
include
did
with our
share.
Funding dialogue.
Okay, perfect. I did share that with Teresa as well, the same night that we had our meeting. And then lastly, and I don't know if anybody's aware of this, I guess it was brought up in the meeting and they kind of looked to me as the town rep to answer it. The Bashaw School received a grant for some garbage cans.
Oh, okay.
And the garbage cans apparently, or garbage and recycling receptacles. These additional receptacles have been apparently offered to the town. And in turn, the youth center was told whatever the town wasn't interested in, then the youth center would be taking. So the youth center asked me, do we know how many receptacles the town is taking? And then in turn, how many the youth center can have. And so my understanding is that there's no cost for this. These are completely free and available for us to take for whatever we see fit.
Can you just kind of contact the Youth Foundation and let us know how many they want?
Okay.
Because we were just dialoguing about those today.
Okay.
And I think we're going to be accessing and utilizing them at the arena primarily.
Okay.
Was our plan.
Yeah, so we made contact. We're gonna try to pick them up this week.
Perfect.
And then we're going to exchange some of the ones at the arena with the newer ones from the
Perfect.
school.
Okay.
But there's quite a few of them, so there's gonna be lots left over, so.
Okay.
I don't know exactly how many we're gonna be needing at the arena, but definitely there's gonna be plenty to go around.
Okay.
So if they can just let us know how many they want, like if they want one recycling, one garbage, or I think they're primarily garbage and recycle, one
And
for
they're
bottles and one.
metal and plastic.
Oh, they're
Yeah.
metal and
Oh, wow.
plastic too.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I'm not sure if we'll be able to utilize those at the arena.
no, the recycled ones we could,
Yeah,
I think, for sure.
okay.
Okay. No, I will reach back out to them and then send you an email.
You can even just have them contact us directly.
Okay.
And then that way we can just let it, they can let us know how many they
Sure.
want and of what nature, and
Okay.
we'll coordinate it.
Sure. That sounds perfect.
That works for you, Patrick?
Yeah, that's fine.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I said, I'm sure there are individuals that know about this and are underway with planning with it, but unfortunately that wasn't me. And then the youth center is also doing a spring raffle, so there will be more details coming out about that. And then other than that, I did receive some in-person visits, some emails, texts, or text, social media messages regarding the Bear Hills stuff that I did respond to, and I have shared with Teresa. And other than that, that's all I got.
Excellent. Counselor McIntosh.
Well, on February 23rd was community board. I was not able to get a sub for that day, so I was not able to attend that meeting, but as my understanding, the CAO went, so that is excellent. February 24th, joined the telephone town hall of municipal affairs and Minister McIver. The short summary of his answers to every question was no. And the questions were, is there funding for X? And the short answer was no. Is there funding for Y? The short answer was no. So I will say that Minister McIver was refreshingly blunt in his assessment. He didn't weasel around things. He just said it like it is. But generally speaking, I mean, there weren't really any surprises that I could see when I reviewed the sections of the budget. And certainly the minister didn't indicate there was anything particularly shocking within the budget. It's all things like the MSI being front loaded that we already knew about. So I thought that was very valuable. February 27th, I once again got to judge 4-H public speaking. I'm quite desired on that circuit.
An expert at that.
Yeah, I think that's my 15th time judging, so I wonder when I get a pin. On March 1st, well, Mayor McDonald and I had a little visit over pancake supper. That was good. And Reeve Smook of Beaver County swung by and had some words with both of us. So that was nice to see an elected official visit our municipality for Show Tuesday. Visit with him. Of course, also on March 1st, we had a special meeting of council that I attended. Very enjoyable. And received various inquiries about Bear Hills over Facebook and email. Nothing too earth shattering. Some people that like it, some people that don't. The surprise in there.
Foreman Taylor.
Well, I've been busy.
You have.
So streets, snow removal, freeze ups and icy conditions, sanding, it's ongoing. We had a water main break on 47 Ave and 51st. It was an 80-inch pipe that pretty much fractured in half. It's since repaired and everything is back up and running. We had a dive team come in and do some cleaning on our reservoir. That was fun to watch. Yeah.
Did you have to empty the reservoir on?
Never mind. No.
Foreman Taylor?
No, we did not. No, we did not lose any water whatsoever. I'm like, where are we gonna put all that water? Of course, I got laughed at. No support whatsoever.
I would ask the same thing.
Lift station 2, pump 1 required immediate attention. I had Sterling come down and do a PM on our lift station, and once they got the panel open, the impeller that was in there was unrecognizable. So it needed to get changed pretty quick, and I lost my gauge.
Nordic IT.
Just don't scribble on it.
Okay.
I guess I can always.
Nordic, they're still having problems with this one unit above the daycare. They can't seem to level it out. He assures me that they're working on it, and hopefully they can get it resolved quickly. But it's been ongoing. And I've reached out to a few companies to get some pricing on cleaning the ducting system in there because it needs to be done pretty quick. So we're working on those things. And that's me.
Thank you, CAO Fuller. You can't copy off his homework.
Should be lost.
Action list items from February 14th, email sent to participating members regarding the flush truck, and we're looking at researching truck pricing. Outstanding from other meetings, the meeting with Canadian National Rail and the Highway 1221. And then council had mentioned that the local small businesses letter to the MLA, that it's no longer required. The environmental 360 waste removal contract, I've received it and just basically we'll be reviewing it with the organization, and not sure whether we gotta evolve it into our standard agreement contract or if we want to just keep their short version, but anyway. Council schedule, we do have the IDP, MDP, and ICF. So the intermunicipal development plan, the municipal development plan, and the intermunicipal collaboration framework test here momentarily to check you on your acronyms, and the strategic plan review dates. Those are still forthcoming. The intermunicipal development plan, I anticipate putting it on the next council meeting agenda, as Anya Howard with Camrose County Planning has been just requesting a cursory review and has some identifying points for us to just check and see if it's still in alignment with what you guys would like to intend. Emergency preparedness, just the contact list to be updated, and I'll have to follow up with the two council members regarding the municipal elected officials course.
Oh, it's done.
Get your homework done.
I know.
So, and then just my various meetings, I was out of the office on February 15th, February 16th. Well, I'm still helping out with payroll, and it's, yeah, anyway, that's a whole other meeting altogether. Anyway, February 17th, we connected with provincial FCSS, Christine Bulow and myself, and just following up on them with some of their updated changes to their website and implementation. February 21st was Family Day. The 23rd, I enjoyed the Community Hall Board, which, you know, if you ask Margaret Alexander, she's got an ongoing thing for tools. But anyway, we did have an interesting dialogue where we kind of did a cursory conversation around, you know, like with our council tour, we talked and dialogued about utilizing this community hall for other options. And they initially, they want more dialogue before we hit the proceed button. I'll leave it at that. And then, of course, payroll implementation and the special meeting of council. Items worked on: development research, ongoing communication support for administration and public works staff, walk-in inquiries, telephone inquiries, assessment follow-up, payroll implementation, agenda preparation, generating minutes for council and staff meetings, communication follow-up, telephone, email, and in person, and just having an increased telephone and communication aspects, and ongoing training in a variety of areas with staff. As Darlene Tucker continues to progress nicely as our new municipal treasurer. However, it's still, we had an ad out for public works positions still. And so we believe we've got an applicant to interview. We'll see how that shakes out. And
Teresa, does that mean we still have an employee that's not back yet?
correct. Yes, so we have Natasha Larkin officially out on maternity leave, and then we continue to have Nathan Innes on leave with Public Works. And then we have hired a replacement staff at the arena right now, and that was on a month-to-month basis, and they work primarily at the arena. And so this individual's skill set might present some, well, we're evolving. We'll leave it at that. Administratively, staff are working well together. Water meter reads and billing was delayed just due to the water repair and stuff. And so everybody worked really well together and was very patient with each other, just in the circumstance.
I had a
You like playing in the mud. So, and year-end processes and audit are ongoing and just following up on auditors' requests for information.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to accept those reports as information?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Kyle. All in favor?
Yep.
Motion is carried. Item 9, we got some correspondence from the National Police Federation. Apparently, the Alberta government is planning on implementing their own police service.
First I've heard of it.
Shock. Town of Gibbons doesn't like the idea of guilty till proven innocent.
Province has that.
So Stu's on here with us, you do recall, right?
Hi, Stu.
He's looking for the quote of the night.
Yeah. And Red Deer says thanks for the hospital.
That's the one.
That's what they said. They're getting a new hospital. They want to thank us for it. Not sure how much we actually had to do with it, but you're welcome, Red Deer. Yeah. Send them a nice "you're welcome" card.
Your worship, I move that we accept the correspondence.
Thank you, Kyle. All in favor? Carried. Item 10. First page, down the bottom.
I suspect people are waiting on me, so I move that we enter closed session to discuss 10.1 legal drainage under Florida section 27, 8:52.
All in favor?
Yep.
Carried. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you.
We'll actually be asking you to depart as well.
Oh, don't they speak on this?
No,
No, it's a closed meeting.
we're reviewing our legal.
Oh,
Is there anybody on there anymore?
Yes.
Let's have Gustav and Stu, which we will be disconnecting,
so do I come back in or what?
and we will be